allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
See what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the minutes from the meeting held on June 14, 2021. Would I make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Second, Carol. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay. All in favor? Is that the same? Public comment.
There are some chairs up front if you'd like to have a seat. Heather.
Citizens' comments. First of all, good evening. Thank you for everybody for coming out. This is a hot topic, and we appreciate people coming out to join us in the conversation. So, before we get into the public comment, we do plan to give everyone who wishes to speak a chance, so we'll extend beyond 15 minutes if needed. In that light, you can try to keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes. That would be helpful. And as always, be respectful to everyone. In light of how similar meetings around the state have gone, I hope that we can set an example of doing this the right way, regardless of the outcome of the vote, and I hope that we can be leaders in that respect. So I just ask that everybody do this respectfully and respect everyone else's opinions. So, are there any citizen comments? That being said, I saw Sarah's hand first.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Sarah Decato of Bethel, Maine. First up, I want to thank the 4 of you that personally responded to my email I sent over a week ago. I appreciate that. I'm a parent of 3 daughters, 2 of which are school age. Professionally, I'm a graduate-prepared nurse with a long-standing expertise in public health. My ask of you tonight is to please vote in favor of a universal mask mandate for all of our staff and students coming back to school this fall. This request follows the recommendation of leading entities of child health, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the American Academy of Pediatrics. This request for universal masking also follows the recently released Department of Education recommendation to do the same. Some will argue, well, I'm vaccinated. Why should I have to mask anymore? We know that the vaccine works as it was intended to work. We know that it has greatly reduced hospitalizations and deaths in that particular population. What we also know is that with the new COVID-19 variants present, those vaccinated can still carry the disease. In fact, before I came here today, I had a friend call me and tell me that they are COVID positive and they are vaccinated. Though probability-wise, they are less likely to become as sick than those unvaccinated, they can infect others. And this includes the children that are too young to be vaccinated. The Delta variant in particular we are seeing right now is 2 times more contagious than what we experienced last school year. More children are now getting sick and more children are being hospitalized. Some will say let's leave it up to the parents to make that choice in regards to having their children masked or not. School safety doesn't happen with making masking optional. My child's and others' level of safety at school greatly decreases if those she has contact with are unmasked. I came across a list of some mask myths taken from healthychildren.org, which if any of you want to check out, it's from, it's called Mask Mythbusters, Common Questions About Kids and Face Masks. And this is an organization that's a subsidy of American Academy of Pediatrics, so this comes from pediatric physicians. And just to run through a couple highlights, can wearing a mask make it harder for my child to breathe? No. Can masks interfere with a child's lung development? No. Do masks trap the carbon dioxide that we normally breathe out? No. Can masks lead to a weaker immune system by putting the body under stress? The answer is no. And if you want to read details on those answers, you can go to that website. As school board directors being left with making the decision on this topic, you have my child's safety and everyone else's returning to the in-school setting in your hands. I'm going to ask again that you vote in favor of universal masking for all staff and students, irrelevant of vaccine status at this time. Thank you.
you. Are there any other citizens' comments? Scott?
Good evening. Board members, Dr. Murphy. My name is Scott Cole. I live in Bethel, and I'm here tonight only to represent my letter that the board members received a few days ago and the enclosures that were in your packet. I'll also just make a quick introduction to my cousin Dave. He's up from Pennsylvania. He's on the school board in his hometown down there, and he thought it would be interesting to come see the board of directors in action here. So that's who this guy is. Sorry for the letter in your packet. Sorry for the length. There were several important ideas that needed to be communicated, and there just wasn't any way to make it any shorter, so it is what it is. In summary, I was a capable school bus driver for the district. My departure at the end of May was not my idea. No need to go any further than that. You can each be your own judge of events, and at this point it hardly matters. It's moot. Things are moot. My understanding at this time is that the district is looking for both a new transportation supervisor and bus drivers as well. My past experience qualifies me for both. I was a transportation officer during my 6 years in the Army. Several of those years were spent commanding truck companies which operated tractor trailers interstate in several states and countries. I left the Army in 1990. Since then I was a successful town manager, county administrator. At this point in my life I've dealt with just about everything. And of course I have a CDL Class B with school bus endorsement. Core message of my letter to the school board here tonight describes a fundamental difference of opinion between myself and the current supervisor. Since the school board and the superintendent ultimately set policy of the district, I'll leave it up to you guys to decide whether or not I'd be a good fit for the school district. Thank you for your time. We wish everyone the very best as you grapple with bigger issues than my concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further citizens' comments? Yep, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Janet Bartlett from Woodstock. I have school-age children here in the district as well as some graduated. I am here asking you to vote no to mandating masks. I would be one along with many others that say that this is not your place. You have to decide on a mask mandate that affects our entire community. This decision should be placed back into the hands of the parents and individuals where it belongs. I do ask you to please clarify if you are to set a mandate on masks now at the mention of a recommendation, what will be the exact measurable unit of when masks would come off of our children, our staff, and our teachers. I do acknowledge that these are hard times, and I again ask you to stand strong and vote no against mandating masks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further citizen comments? Go ahead.
Hi everyone, I don't have anything formal prepared, but my name is Amy Cannell, and I am the relatively new Executive Director at MKA, Mahoosa Kids Association. I stand with Sarah, who, I don't know if she's going to share this, but also sits on our board, as does my friend Greg Gilman. This summer, we had a decision to make, and I felt a little bit nervous going into the summer, but I felt really strongly that we needed to do a couple of things. We wanted 100% of our staff to be vaccinated, and then we also mandated masks inside. We did those things with pretty great ease. Didn't get any blowback from parents, families, staff members, anything, and we've just graduated 8 weeks. So clearly these things work, and I just wanted to stand by Sarah and say, please vote for a mask mandate. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further citizen comments?
I'm sorry, there is a hand up.
Okay. Your name?
Karen.
Oh.
I'm going to mispronounce her
Hi.
name.
Is it Karen?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, my name is Karen Bielik, and my daughter will be starting kindergarten in the fall. We live in Bethel. And I am also in favor of universal masking this fall. And I wanted to share a news story that I heard tonight on the radio. The pediatrician, Dr. Laura Blaisdell, was doing a summary report of the successful reopening of summer camps around the state of Maine. MKA is, I think, a great example of this.
And she emphasized, the reporter asked her, what can we do to successfully reopen our schools? And the reporter, Dr. Blaisdell, emphasized universal masking, good ventilation, testing, health screenings, not coming to school when you're sick, and then eventually vaccination when that becomes available. I think our summer camps and our successful reopening of many schools around the state last year with these strategies in place, we saw low transmission rates, and I think those are good examples of how we can proceed this year with the new Delta variant and the continued spread of COVID. I think I would encourage the board to vote for masking, at least until all of our children have the opportunity to get vaccinated and we see the COVID numbers starting to come down throughout the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further citizen comments? And just remind everybody, this is your last chance as we go into a business meeting after this, so there won't be any time for citizen comments later on. All right, thank you. Board member comments. And before we start that, I'd just like to mention, we'll be discussing this on the agenda, so if you can refrain from the mass comments for now, and then we'll discuss that when the agenda item comes up. So this would be a time for any other announcements or whatever you might have, if there are any. Seeing none. Chairman's report. I'd like to welcome, let's see, 3 new board members tonight. We have Coral Fraser from Bethel, Dave Jones from Bethel, and Amy Henley from Nuri. So welcome you guys, and thank you for coming. David Bartlett will also be coming back onto the board. He's not able to make tonight's meeting, but he'll be back at some point. So, I believe the only committee report we have tonight is Region 9.
That's correct. Mr. Clanton and Ms. Taylor could not make it tonight, but Mr. Clanton sent me a summary, and I said that I would read it on his behalf. This is a Region 9 report. Region 9 reports that they recently hired a new adult education director and also an assistant director, both of whom will also serve as academic teachers as required. Although our adult education program primarily serves students from RSUs 10 and 56, services such as vocational and enrichment programs are available to students from SAD 44. We presently have good enrollment from Telstar with about 40 students signed up. Of course, we would like to see more. So would we. Just get more kids, the better, right? All together. Our application for a possible plumbing program has been submitted to the Department of Education. If approved as expected, the program could start as early as next fall. It's important to remember that state approval does not necessarily mean that we will actually be starting a program, which is dependent on funding and enrollment. First day of school for the coming year will be September 1st, with teachers reporting on August 30th. We still have more room for students in some of the programs, while others are full. Of course, enrollment numbers are always rather fluid in the opening days of the year, as some students whose applications were approved will not show. Others will show with application in hand unannounced. We make every effort to accommodate all comers, although sometimes that entails offering a student an alternative program to one that might already be filled. If your student wants to come to Region 9, we'll make every possible effort to make it happen. And then I also received an update this afternoon from Ms. Taylor, who wanted me to mention that the forestry program at Region 9 has been suspended for the year. So apparently that is not going to be offered this year. So that's the report from Mr. Clanton and Ms. Taylor, and those are our 2 Region 9 representatives to the school board.
Thank you. Quick note on the other committees. Have we sent out the paperwork to
Yes.
choose which committee?
Yes, they're coming in. Yeah, I'll go through that in my report.
Okay,
too.
all right, sounds good. All of you?
Okay, thanks. So, since the last meeting in June, the board authorized me to hire folks during the summer. So tonight, I'll be going through some of those later on in the agenda. As far as appointments go, ones that typically don't go to the board, those are ed techs and other non-certified staff. And since our last meeting, we've hired Haley Barter as an ed tech 3 at Telstar High School, Jillian Bryce, which I think we'll have confirmation on that tomorrow, as an ed tech 3. Special ed for CPS, Woodstock, and Middle School. Alex Edmonds, an ed tech 3 at CPS. Kathleen Gingras, she'll be the shared secretary between CPS and the Special Education Department. Linda Yates, Woodstock School Secretary. Alec Newell will be returning to Telstar, and he will be at Ed Tech 3 at Telstar, taking over Charlie Raymond's position when Charlie retired last year. And Jackie Martin will be joining us as a custodian working at Woodstock and Telstar. And just for purposes of clarification, these are all positions that are replacement positions for other people who have left, resigned, retired, or whatever. Transfers since our last meeting: Ashley Savage has moved from grade 4 to middle school, grade 6 math. Nicole Priola has moved from the Woodstock Elementary School and Telstar Middle School special ed position to Telstar High School special ed position. Heather Jordan, school secretary who had shared the role of CPS and special ed, has moved to Telstar Middle School as the secretary. So just passing that along. Appointments for Schedule B positions. These are our coaching positions and other extracurricular positions. Head football coach Tim O'Connor, who I understand saw his team have a good afternoon today against Mountain Valley. Congratulations. Assistant football coach Devin Vale. Head girls soccer coach Scott White. Head field hockey coach Gail White. Assistant field hockey coach Laurie Davis. Cross country coach Scott Underhill. Senior class advisors Elk Blouse and Kelly Frazier. Junior class advisor Carrie Lynch. Sophomore class advisor Tara Ingraham. Freshman class advisor Cheyenne Millette Cordwell. Student council Tara Ingraham and Kelly Frazier. Yearbook photographer Tara Ingraham. Tara's going to be busy this year. National Honor Society Elka Blouse. FBLA Future Business Leaders Melissa Poston. Interact Lindsay Smith. And at Telstar Middle School, head field hockey coach is going to be Renee Charette. Cross country coach is Colleen Raymond. Boys soccer is Nicholas Conrad. And student council will be Linda Cosolino. That's lots happened since June, so I apologize for having to go through all those. And then we've had several resignations. Amanda Bryant, who had been a CPS Ed Tech 3, was effective August 13th. That's one of the positions that we filled. Kathy Doyen, CPS grade 5, effective June 17th, 2021. Mary Prue, middle school, grade 7 science, effective August 2nd, 2021. And Ron Deegan, transportation maintenance supervisor, effective at the end of September. I just personally want to thank Ronnie for all the incredible work that he's done during his tenure here in the district. Our buildings and grounds and transportation department has never been stronger. So thank you, Ronnie, very much. And we have a few agenda items later on, which I'll go over at that time. As I mentioned earlier, I think we're very fortunate. One of our COVID grants has allowed us to convince Chris Cole to stay on and assist us this year. As you know, Chris retired at the end of last year after several decades. Sounds like a long time, Chris. As our district nurse, and she will be helping us out, helping Rosemary Weiser, who I will introduce to you later tonight. Actually, I'll introduce you now. Rosemary, would you just wave? Rosemary is our new district nurse, and she comes to us with good experience, and so we're very fortunate for that. And having Chris in the background to support us with her knowledge of the whole COVID situation will be a great opportunity for us as well. And that will not be funded through the district budget, so it's even more exciting. So, not that you're not worth it, Chris, you definitely are. So that is covered. SAD, she would have been disappointed if I hadn't said something to that effect. MSAD 44 school board reorganization will take place next month. And at this point, we have a policy in place that says that any interested candidates for board chair have to notify me by date certain. And Mr. Whitney, the good news, I think, for you is that you were the only person who indicated interest in that. So you will be running unopposed for board chair, and we'll also be looking at filling other vacancies as well. And hopefully by that time, we'll also be able to let folks know what committees that you'd be assigned to. If you brought your committee assignment paper with you tonight, and you could drop it off with me before you leave, that would be great. I've been informed that Robin knows that if I get it, it's supposed to go in the bag, so she'll be checking the bag, I'm sure, tomorrow morning. And we try to give everybody their first or second choice, and we'll do the best we can to meet your requests. And we'll try to do that as soon as possible. Also, I would be negligent if I didn't mention that tonight's a special evening. Amy Henley is joining us as a new board member from Newry, and it is her birthday. And I've been told not to lead any kind of happy birthday song, so let me just wish you on behalf of everybody here tonight, happy birthday, Amy. And I remember Amy when she was at the Crescent Park Elementary School. So it dates one of us, I'm not sure which one. I'm going to touch on a couple of other things before I turn this presentation over to Tanya, Rosemary, and Chris for the pool testing. I want to congratulate our staff members who worked very, very diligently to pursue a grant opportunity to support the district development of resilience intervention teams in the district. Thanks to Jenny Smith and Lindsay Lecce and some other folks. We just received word last week that the John T. Gorman Foundation has funded $14,500 to provide a consultant to help with that effort. And I know we talked about this at a board meeting at the end of the year last year, and we are planning on having Lindsay and Jenny come and speak, maybe some other folks too, come and speak probably at the September board meeting so you can find out more about what's happening with that. So congratulations to them. And then also Scott Underhill, who is the high school physical education teacher, has been working really, really hard to try to come up with some funding to support an outing club, which at some point the board will need to consider and hopefully approve, but working on trying to get funding to establish a mountain bike program for our kids and take advantage of the trails that we have out back. And so he found out last week as well, same day as a matter of fact, that he received a $1,500 grant from Teens to Trails. That's a program that's being done in cooperation with the Department of Education, and that money will be able to go towards beginning funding some of that. We also have some other opportunities that we're taking advantage of to help raise some funds, and again, that will probably, well, that will not take anything out of the district budget. That's all going to be money that we raise separately through grants and so on. Staff returns next Monday. Erin Osgood came in, I said, how was your summer? And she said, over. I said, yeah, pretty much. But it's been a quick summer. I think we would all say that at the end of June, the beginning of July was great. And then, you know, we're all here tonight because the middle of July and the end of July wasn't so good. But anyway, that's that. And then the kids come back on Wednesday. And I think the kids that I've seen and bumped into and heard about are also pretty excited about that. We do have a new website that is just getting up and running. We're fine-tuning it, so bear with us a little bit. And that's also going to have a new app that we'll be using to communicate with families. So the old instant alert system that you came to know and love. And for those of you here for the first time tonight, I'll tell you a quick story that I was in Rumford. And I was at a store and I said something, and the woman in front of me went, "You must be the superintendent of schools. I recognize your voice." So I guess it was worth something. But we will be replacing that. And so right now, one of the options that they have is a woman's automated voice. So if you hear from me, it's me. And we'll keep you posted on those transitions. So check in on the website every once in a while, and you know, that would be helpful too. We try and get as much information up there as we can. Finally, one of the things that we're doing this year to try to address some of the issues that were raised earlier tonight under the comments is to provide every option possible to support our kids and our families. And one of those is something called pooled testing. It's not pool testing. People were like, pool now or what? But it's pooled testing with an ED at the end of that. And Tanya Arsenault has really served as our connection to that program since the end of last year when Chris retired, during the interim between Chris's retirement and her willingness to come back on board, and Rosemary joining us just recently as a new district nurse. So I want to thank Tanya for taking the lead on that, and also I know she's been meeting with Rosemary and with Chris, and so I think we're in a good position. So tonight we're going to take just a few minutes, and we're going to look at a website, a PowerPoint presentation or a slideshow that they've put together that will help explain that. And then later this week, you'll be getting a voicemail, maybe from the old instant alert system, because I can't let that go and it doesn't expire until August 30th. Basically letting people know about the pool testing option. This is optional, so if parents want to participate, they're going to be encouraged to do that because it does give us some latitude when it comes to quarantining students and so on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya and Chris and Rosemary, and I think Tanya's going to start it off.
All right, so I am Tanya Arsenal, the principal of Crescent Park, and Rosemary has been great to work with her throughout the past couple of weeks to really get ready for the start of the school year and for this pooled testing program. And along with Chris, I think that we're in a really good spot. I saw some of our items for the pooled testing arrive today. So we'll do our best right now to explain what the program is, what it looks like for our students and for our families and for our staff. And if the board has any questions at the end, we would be more than happy to answer those. So Mike's going to do his best to get us through this slideshow.
In theory.
There's just a quick, short little video that explains a little bit about how pooled testing works that we'll share to start. So this is what actually came in the mail today. We received our order. It comes with everything that we will need for the pooled testing program. Comes with the swabs, the sanitizing, things that we need, a little barcode scanner for the test tubes, and that all arrived today. From there, we will take and distribute it to where it needs to be to each of the schools and to each of the classrooms with students that are participating. So they'll need the swabs, a collection tube, and the alcohol wipes as well. This is what it looks like in a classroom. When students sanitize their hands, they get their swab, and their big kind of slogan that they use is, if you can pick your nose, you can do it. It's not a test that goes, not invasive. It's just a swab 4 times around, and then you can see the students go and put it in the test tube, sanitize their hands, and it is done. That's all that the students are responsible for. From there, our staff will prepare the tube, get it ready for shipping. We register the tubes, the barcode scanner. And then pack it up.
We do it much quicker
I
than
say,
that.
yeah. They told us it'll be 5 minutes max. But this is something, this part of the process is all something that our nursing staff, and then you'll hear a little bit more later about a staff that they provide. And then you wait for the results. We get results back between 24 and 48 hours. So I'll go through in more detail kind of what each part of that process means, but I just wanted to show you that quick video to kind of explain the overall process. So Mike, if you want to go to the next slide.
I'm trying to get there.
Okay.
There we go.
So why pool testing? That's an important thing for us all to know. What is the advantage of doing it? And it's a more efficient way to test large groups and provide for the early detection of possible COVID cases in our students or our staff in our schools. It really has an added benefit of reducing educational disruption. Last year when we had a positive test, we would have to go to remote instruction or quarantine a large group of students. With pool testing and with the early detection, it's really meant to eliminate that as much as possible. There will still be students that would have to quarantine, but it'll be minimal compared to what we were dealing with last year.
Next.
Yes, sorry. As Dr. Murphy said, participation is completely voluntary for our students and for our staff. Anybody under the age of 18 will need parental consent, and parental consent can be done online. There'll be a link on our website, and all of these materials will be on our website as well with some additional information for you if you're wondering some more, if you have some questions about it. But it will be completely voluntary. You do not have to sign up. Your students don't have to sign up. But we are encouraging it because of the benefits of that it's going to provide for your students. It will provide the opportunity for them to hopefully stay in school for the entire year. If they don't participate, they don't have to, we're not going to kick them out of school. They can still come. There's some things that will happen if we get a positive pool. Yeah.
Would
You
you
want
please
me to
say
cancel?
cancel?
So in a classroom of 15 students, if there are 10 students that participate in the pool testing and 5 that do not, if we get a positive pool back, those 10 students would not have to quarantine. The 5 that are not participating would have to serve their quarantine period. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Go to the next slide. All right. So the steps in the process, what it's going to look like for our district, we're already on step 1, the training and the materials. Chris, Rosemary, and I have all been working with the company, Concentric, to get trained on what this looks like, how to implement it in all of our schools. We set up a schedule, or we're working on a schedule to make sure that it's not going to disrupt our students. We're trying to set it up at times that it's ideal throughout the day. We will collect consent. Hopefully tomorrow this information will be online. You will get information about how to go through that process if you have a student in our district who is under the age of 18. From there, the pool testing will actually happen once a week. So in each of the classes, those people that will consent will go around with the materials. Rosemary, our other staff on board that are helping out, they'll go around with the swabs, have the students do it, they'll collect the tubes, and then from there, we'll get the results back in 24 to 48 hours. They are saying it's closer to 24, but they give us the 48-hour window just to be sure. So if there's 2 things that are going to happen when we have a pool test. In a classroom, our pool's either going to come back negative or positive. If it comes back negative, that means that in that classroom, those participants in the pool's testing are all presumed to be negative from COVID. If there's a positive pool, so let's say I'm in 4th grade class and my classroom tests positive, then somebody in that pool is presumed to be positive for COVID. From there, we would do a Buy Next Now test on all of the people that were in the pool to identify who it was in that pool that was positive for COVID. From there, that person that we identify would be the one that would have to quarantine. So that person is the only one, or 2 people or 3 people, whatever it turns out to be. They would be the ones that would have to quarantine. They would serve their period of 10 days, monitor for 4. But the other students that participated in that pool, even though they were close contacts because they were part of that classroom, they would not have to quarantine because they had a negative test. And if you guys have anything to add to this as we go, by all means. Let me go to the next slide. So, as we've gone through, the video explained, the students would start with a self-swab, and they really said it's easy to do. I actually gave a building tour the other day to an incoming 4th grader who participated in a pool testing program last year. So I asked her, how was it? Like, the first time it was, kind of weird. After that, it was easy. She goes, it took us maybe 5 minutes throughout, each week to do it. And it was something that they got used to. All of the people that participate in the pool would go into one test tube that gets sent away. And that's how you determine the positive or the negative pool. And as I just explained, if it's negative, it's unlikely that anybody in that pool has COVID. We go on with education and teaching and learning. If it's positive, then we would, as a district, provide the follow-up testing with the Buy Next Now to identify who in that pool is positive and quarantine that particular person. This is just a flow chart that explains that. I don't have to go through it, but it's a visual that will be online if you guys are visual learners. Again, what happens when the results are received? Negative, we go on. Positive, we Buy Next Now, and hopefully only quarantine one person and the rest of the people. If not participating in pool testing, so you have a class of 15, the 10 that are, the 5 that don't participate, they would have to quarantine if they did not participate in the pool testing. So there are going to be multiple people kind of involved in this, but it really is minimal disruption and minimal responsibility for classroom teachers. Chris, Rosemary, building principals, other nursing staff, Karen, Kat down at Woodstock, they will be the primary people that are responsible for overseeing and making sure that the program goes off without a hitch. They have different fancy roles. Test champion, who are the building administrators, Mark really likes that name. Test supervisors, that's Chris and Rosemary, and then the test observers, those are the teachers. They also provide us with a third-party staffing partner who provides support for our district. So they've partnered with RCM, which is a staffing company, and they will provide us on our testing day with an additional support nurse who will come in, oversee the program. So they'll help to distribute the swabs, they'll help with the testing in the classrooms, they'll help collect to make sure that the swabs go into the test tubes appropriately. They'll work on getting it all shipped, packaged and shipped appropriately, and provided to the courier service. So there really is minimal work for a classroom teacher. They just have to oversee the swabbing of the students. This is the information about the staffing partner that they will also, just make sure that they're entered into the system so that we can get the results. So, why pool testing? On top of the fact that it really provides for us early detection of COVID, it's going to help with minimal disruption of learning. The students who participate, unless they test positive, will not have to quarantine if there is a positive case. It really is going to help with a lot of things in our district if our students participate. The state, one of the directives that they have at the state level is if we participate in pool testing, we can look at reducing our physical distancing. They say that we can get, within the 3 feet, the 3-foot rule. All those who participate can also pick up on the asymptomatic people, so it can detect if you're carrying COVID but you don't actually show symptoms. They did a lot of testing on the program and what it looks like compared to the gold standard PCR tests, and it correctly identified 96% of the positive tests and 100% of the negative tests. So that means that there was no false positives. So this isn't a program that's just going to maybe work. They've done their homework and their studies, and it really has proven to be effective. And then, just for your own, sense of peace of mind, the pool test results aren't going to be shared widely. They'll only be shared with those people that need to know. So those, that information will be kept confidential for you and your student. So that's kind of a quick overview of the program. We are set to go. As I said, our materials came today. If you have any questions about it, Chris, Rosemary, and I would be happy to try our best to answer those for you. Or if you don't have any questions now, but you think of them later, you can email us. Marcy, hi.
Quick question. So the children who do not participate, will they be able to test out of quarantine?
They cannot test out of quarantine.
They need to follow the CDC quarantine guidelines.
Okay. Second question, is it a private lab that you're sending them to, or Heddle?
It is through the concession company who has a certified lab.
We use a courier service and then they bring them to the lab, and I'm not sure, but we can get you that.
Oh, I'm only curious because I know like Heddle get, like we use Heddle where I work,
Yeah.
and they get so behind sometimes just with the sheer mass that sometimes the results take longer than the typical 24 to 48 hours.
So, when meeting with the concentric partner, they are saying that their results, they say 48, but most of them come back within 24. and it's all online. There's a digital system that we have access to that will get an email instantly if there's a positive pool. And hopefully they've been quick.
And last one, I swear. Follow up to my first one. So, can you explain to me why the children wouldn't be able to test out of quarantine if they, like if I took my son to Walgreens and had him tested? Can you explain that a little bit?
The CDC, what the recommendation is for somebody who is exposed to COVID-19 currently is you must quarantine for 10 days and you cannot test out of that.
So maybe I misunderstood. So the children who were in the pool
Right,
would not necessarily have to be quarantined
right,
because they tested.
right.
Correct.
Because they test it early on, so the test is very, detects it early, so it's asymptomatic. And where we're doing it every week, it's like a surveillance level. So it's all about the timing of the test weekly versus knowing when they're exposed afterwards, and then it's a longer time between that period.
And I think the peculiarity is that if you are then going to decide on who is quarantined or not among the pooled students by means of an individual test, how does their situation differ from that of someone who wasn't part of the pool but was then individually tested at the same time in the same manner? That's what I think that may be where we've got a disjunction.
Yeah.
And I think the answer to that, if I correct me if I'm wrong, but is the person that is determined to be positive as a result of Binax testing would have to quarantine the exact way that Chris just talked about. It would be all the other students that wouldn't have to quarantine. So just that one person, like when they identify, let's say they identify 10 students in a classroom that participated in that pool, they would then have to individually test those using the Binax test.
Yes.
That would be designed to try to find the person that actually was the one that tested positive. That person would still have to do the quarantine, but the others wouldn't.
Understood. But if at the same time those who had not been in the pool underwent the same Binax test and were negative, I don't see how their situation differs from that of those who were in the pool. That's my.
Oh, I see.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's one we asked, right?
Yeah.
I think I remember us asking.
Yes, we had that conversation.
What it is we're doing it weekly. So we're picking up with this particular test, you're picking up COVID-19 very early, before anybody is showing symptoms. So we can get that student quarantined, and the rest of the students in the pool don't have to quarantine. But if you're not in the pool, you're the other 5, you have been exposed at some point, but we don't know where. You're probably gonna go be quarantined, you might test 5 to 7 days, 10 days, come back, but we're continually testing the pool.
Okay.
Continually testing the pool. Every week we're testing it.
Thanks, Chris.
Did you have a question, Stephanie?
Yeah, I think it was just, what makes the people that tested in the pool, that did pool, not close contacts anymore? Is it just like once the ball gets rolling and it's every week?
It's because at that point, when that one person tested positive, the other people tested negative, and then that person that tested positive will be in quarantine.
Right.
And then it's that every week testing.
And then they're followed up every week.
Okay, so if somebody did but wasn't presenting yet, you would
Right.
catch that the following week, and you would just, okay.
Now, say we get a positive pool, and we Binax everybody that as soon as we know, and we don't get a positive result. Then the recommendation is you wait 24 hours, test again.
So I just want to clarify, this is happening all over the state.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that.
Yeah.
It also happened in quite a few summer schools.
Yep.
I think, I don't know exactly how many, but I was in part of the meeting where they talked about the experience, and people were very positive about it.
So I just wanted to be on the record, this is not offense 44.
Correct.
This is a-
Yes. Yeah. And a lot of schools I know did it last year as well, not in the state,
Right.
but it definitely in other parts of the country. That one particular student that I talked to the other day.
We definitely encourage you too, that if you have questions, or if you're in the audience, you have questions and you'd like to contact any of these folks or your building administrator, please do that, because we want to make sure people have whatever information they need to feel comfortable with it. We will be getting information out, and just again to stress that it is optional at this point, but we're encouraging it for the reasons that you just heard.
we'll get that slideshow up, as well as there's a great parent handout, and then some videos and a link right to the Concentric site. Yes.
What are we doing for the students who are out of school for 10 days as far as classwork?
So we are not offering a remote option. That's a great question, but we're not going to offer the remote option this year for the students to be able to Zoom in. They'll work individually with their classroom teacher to get the work that they need to be, complete the work either during that time or when they return. From
Like
school.
pre-COVID.
There will be an option for them to have classwork at home while
It-
they're in quarantine.
It's going to be on a case by case. We're not going to guarantee, it's not going to be they leave that day and then the next day they're going to have, a day's worth of work. There might be some projects that they can work on, some assignments that they have kind of ongoing in their class that they can do. There'll be some stuff, but then, in a kindergarten class, we're not going to be assigning long-term projects for those kids to do during that period. So it really is a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
Other questions? And again, as Dr. Murphy said, I'm more than happy to answer any questions, or these ladies, if you think of any after. Erin?
Just for clarification, we're not voting on this, correct?
Correct.
This is already in motion?
Yeah, this is already something that we're going to, and it's completely voluntary and optional. So if it's something that you choose not to participate in or have your child participate in, that is completely your choice.
And the staff and classroom teachers also have the opportunity to participate as well, if they want to in the pool. And we'll have it set up so the folks that are not with one specific class also can be in their own pool and get tested as well, if that's something they'd like to do.
You may be wondering how this is gonna work at the high school, middle school level. Obviously, K-5, you've got your contained classrooms. And for the middle school, they meet every morning in what we call wrap groups, and in the high school, they meet in satellite groups. So those will be a pool.
So teachers have the option of participating in pool testing. Will they be quarantined for 10 days if they are not participating in the program?
Depends on vaccination. If you're vaccinated, you do not have to quarantine.
But for students, vaccination status does not matter. If a high school student is vaccinated, they still have to quarantine?
No.
Good question.
That is, yeah. I'm speaking from the elementary mind where we don't have many kids that are vaccinated, so that's a great question.
Well, thank
All
you,
right.
folks. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Appreciate it. I just have a couple more quick things. Just want people to know that we're still looking for applicants for several positions in the district. We have a 5th grade opening at the Woodstock School, high school science teacher, and a middle school social worker. So if you know folks who might be out there that are looking for positions, we would ask that you encourage them to apply. Those are obviously all very important positions. We have not had a lot of applicants this summer, and that's historically been true across the state, especially across western Maine. And I also just want to mention, to kind of complement what we just heard about the pool testing, we will be offering, in conjunction with Stevens Memorial, local agencies, another option at some point down the road for vaccinations for families that might want their kids to be vaccinated. So again, not mandatory, but kind of makes it a little bit easier. We had about 50 students last year that participated in that when we offered it. And so we'll try to see if we can line something up again at some point, at the beginning of the school year or whenever we can work it out with those agencies. So thank you. That concludes Superintendent's report.
Thank you. Any old business? New business? We don't have any. And on to number 3. See what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the superintendent's recommendation for masking in schools. I would recommend that we make a motion to open discussion and hear what the recommendation is, and then we can amend the motion to whatever folks want.
Yeah, you're actually going to vote on opening it with a second, and then you can listen to it, and then you can discuss that motion and vote it up, down, sideways, whatever. But thank you. I have a few comments too that I'd like to, I'm sorry, thank you, Danny. Yeah, you're
Would I like to make that motion?
I'll make a motion, we open for discussion.
I shall second that motion.
So I think right now it's just open.
Yep, that's
open
fine,
for
that's
discussion.
fine. Thank you, Ms. Whitney. First of all, I would really like to thank those of you who joined us tonight, both in person and on Zoom, to voice your thoughts about the masking issue. We also received some great letters from folks in preparation for tonight's meeting, and I've shared those as I've received them to all the members of the board. So if you sent the letter in, the board has had a chance to read that, and again, thank you for that. With the expiration of the governor's emergency order earlier this summer, school boards across the state are now being charged with a very difficult task of making individual decisions about what process is going to be followed for the coming school year with regard to masking. If you follow the news, you know that unfortunately many of these meetings have been contentious ones, and I just want to say that I appreciate the tone that's been taken here tonight with folks as you presented your comments. And I'm proud of that, and I appreciate the fact that you are sending a very positive message to our students and our community by the way that you're addressing this. This is a tough decision. School boards, superintendents, community members are all being put in a very difficult position, and that's happening across the state. In so many ways, last year it was a mandatory thing because it was executive order, and that was one less thing that we had to deal with at the time. And of course, that's all changed now. But I do think that by moving forward in the continued direction that we've had so far tonight, it sends a really positive message to our kids, and I think that's very, very important, especially if they're watching the news or reading the paper and seeing the kinds of things that are happening in other places across the state. So thank you. I want to start with that. I understand the passion that exists on both sides of this issue, and believe me when I tell you this, that there's nobody in this world that would rather see this whole thing return to normalcy than me. You know, we were very definitely involved with a lot of experiencing many challenges last year, and we faced them together throughout the year, and again, proud of the way that we came out on top of that. Earlier today, I participated in a meeting with the Commissioner of Education, and at that time, she informed us that at the present time, approximately 20% of all of the identified cases in our state are patients that are 20 years old or younger. She mentioned that Maine is now ranking either number 3 or number 4 in the country in regard to that percentage. As you, I'm sure, are aware, cases across Maine have been seeing increases almost on a daily basis in recent weeks. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, this district has made it a point to follow the recommendations of the Maine CDC and the Maine DOE, Department of Education. And as you're aware, taking that approach has served our district well when compared to many other places across the state. We've been much more fortunate than many other school systems in dealing with the trials and tribulations that have come along with COVID-19. As you might imagine, we've been spending a great deal of time in recent weeks following this issue and discussing it. And at this time, my recommendation to the board is to continue to follow the CDC and DOE guidelines and to begin the school year with universal masking for all students and staff. But, and it's a big but to relax those guidelines and as soon as we possibly can, based on changes in guidelines that come down the pike. I know that there will be many people who strongly oppose that recommendation and many people who embrace it. Please know that this recommendation isn't intended to satisfy anybody on either side of that. This recommendation is, I feel, my obligation to make on behalf of the students and staff in the district. And it's in line with the approach that we've been taking over the past 18 months. It provides us with the best chance to minimize disruptions to the education of our students, especially if we can complement it with things like the pool testing, vaccination clinics, and so on. The school board also received a letter that was submitted by our district health professionals, Ms. Weiser, Ms. Cole, and Dr. Richard Carolis, who serves as the MSAD 44 consulting doctor, and all three endorsed the use of universal masking at this time. As we initially moved through the pandemic together, we quickly learned the importance of becoming nimble and making the necessary adjustments as we moved forward, as we navigated our way through the many challenges that we faced. And if you go back in time to just a year ago, I mean, if we had a positive case, first positive case we had actually was not a positive case. The state told us that they had identified somebody, they didn't, and it was one of our longer periods of being out of school. We adjusted as we went through, and by the end of the year, the approach that we were taking was much different than the approach that it was at the beginning of the school year. And we did this together. Our staff made the effort, our students were spectacular, our parents, our school board, and our community as a whole. I felt that as a community, people were really plugging along, trying to do the best they could. And in many places where I would go, I would hear people say, how fortunate TAD 44 is that they have the opportunity to have all of their students, pre-K through grade 12, participating in school instruction 5 days a week. Pretty much unheard of last year. And by the end of the year, we had about 90% of our kids who were in these buildings participating that way, fully masked. And I have to tell you, as an adult who had questions about whether or not the kids would be able to cope, our kids are fantastic. All the way from kindergarten, all the way up pre-K, all the way up to high school, kids really showed us what they could do. And, you know, kudos to them, because it was impressive. Ultimately, our primary goal is always going to be to ensure safety, a sense of well-being, and as many positive educational experiences as we can provide for our students, as well as doing everything possible to keep our kids in school. To that end, we've enrolled in the state's pool testing program that we talked about tonight, and we'll continue to work with the area health agencies, as I mentioned, to see if we can provide vaccination opportunities for those families that wish to take advantage of it. The state's been clear that the goal is to establish an expectation for in-school learning this year. With nearly 90% of our students enrolled last year, we were far more fortunate than many other places, as I stated before. At the last board meeting in June, we discussed the whole notion of remote instruction and basically ruled out participation in the Western Maine Remote Academy due to a variety of different situations, not the least of which was the exorbitant cost of buying a seat in that. We still do have the option, potentially, of purchasing few, maybe, probably not even a few, maybe a couple, if other districts who purchase the seats don't take advantage of those. Personally, I believe it's far better to start the school year off with a masking requirement in place and then relax it as soon as possible, rather than being in a situation where we have to reverse that. Starting off without masks and then requiring everybody to go back to them. And I know a lot of kids throughout the summer were involved in things, not MKA, but other things that maybe didn't require them to mask. And so this is going to be an adjustment. But it was an adjustment last year too. And you know, as superintendent, I will tell you, the minute that it appears as though the guidelines are relaxed enough to feel comfortable with making the recommendation to relax that requirement, I'll be the first person in line to do that. But at this point in time, I feel it's in the best interest of our kids to make the recommendation I'm making tonight. Please understand that this is a recommendation. It's a recommendation being made by me in my capacity as superintendent. It's one I truly believe in, based on everything that I've experienced so far. But ultimately, this is going to be the members of the board tonight who make the decision about the approach that we take. And I'm sure there'll be an interesting conversation on that, and I'm sure that they've had a chance to listen to you. I know that many people have heard from different people in the community with their thoughts and viewpoints on it as well, and that's great. And again, appreciate the way that that has all taken place. And as the board works tonight to come up with a final decision about how the school year will begin, I have every confidence in them that they'll do the best they can in accordance with what they feel is the right thing to do on behalf of our kids. And I'd urge everybody here tonight, as will I, to support whatever decision is made by the board at the conclusion of this meeting. So again, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I want to thank you for the appropriate way that this meeting was held compared to a lot of other places. And at this point, I would just turn it back to you, and you want to continue the conversation. But my recommendation, just to kind of summarize it, is that we would start the school year off with universal masking in place in a way that lines up with what the expectations are as set by the CDC. So, you know, there are some things about, okay, if adults are in school after school and they're only by themselves and they're all fully vaccinated, those kinds of things, whatever the guidelines are, we'll follow those, and then relax them as soon as the opportunity presents itself. And you can either give me that authority to make that decision, which you know me well enough to know you're going to hear about it anyway, or, you know, we could schedule times that we come back at the next board meeting or the meeting after that. But it's possible that, you know, things could shift. They shifted very quickly at the beginning of July. With any luck, we can hope that maybe they'll shift in the other direction sometime in the not too distant future. That's all I've got. Thank you very much, Mr. Whitney. Thank you, folks, for listening.
Thank you. So, Tammy, since you made that motion, would you like to amend it one way or the other, now that we know the recommendation, and then we'll open discussion on that?
Or maybe you could just consider that, consider that motion, and then, as the discussion is over.
So I make a motion that we don't approve the superintendent's recommendation for masking.
Okay. Get a second on that?
The motion is to,
Do not approve the recommendation.
I will second that motion.
Okay, now we will open discussion with that motion on the floor.
Wait, what? Do you need another motion though, because what are you gonna vote on? You're not really voting on, you're voting just to not accept it?
Right,
Okay, and then
and
you have-
then we would have to
gotcha.
do another
All right,
motion, yes,
good,
yes,
thank you.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, just to be clear, this would be to vote to decline the recommendation, and then we would need another motion to move forward, but we can do that afterwards, so.
So should the discussion be about not accepting, or, I'm not sure.
To go backwards.
The same discussion.
I think you can discuss it. I think you can discuss
Okay,
it.
okay, so I'll start discussing it. My name is Stephanie Herbeck. I have 2 daughters in the system, one at Telstar and one at Preston Park, who has not been vaccinated, but my older one has. My husband's in healthcare and works at 4 different hospitals in 4 different communities. So this has been a discussion on so many levels for so long, I can't tell you. But I wanted to share some thoughts. Let me start out by saying I'm not entering this discussion thinking that somehow my perspective is the only one. I've always believed very strongly that the more varied and diverse perspectives brought to the table in any given group, committee, or board is to the great benefit of all. We can't expect every member to have considered every angle, and we can't expect to know the realities of every family in the district. It is our responsibility as elected school members to listen to and consider all points of view, as there are many, and mine, I fully realize, is just one. Regardless of differing opinions, we have a common ground in which we all stand, where we as board members have agreed to see beyond our own personal opinions and choices and to consider what's best for the greater good, and to do what's best for the physical and mental well-being of the entire student body and staff. Some considerations. Our students have exceeded expectations with regard to masking in the past. We know numbers are on the rise again and that the Delta variant is considerably more contagious, and this alone increases our chances of experiencing multiple school shutdowns and quarantining. We know now that vaccinated individuals can carry and spread the virus to others, and this, for me, was a total game changer. This would be one of those things that I learned that would change my perspective. Knowing that 100% of students from pre-K through 6th grade are ineligible for vaccination cannot be ignored, nor can I ignore the overwhelming recommendation from experts at the federal, state, and district levels to start the school year requiring indoor masking for students and staff. This is a decision that can be revisited again in the future, but right now all I want to do is to give our students the best opportunity at academic and social stability and success for this year. I've had some parents express worry on behalf of their kids that if some kids are masking and some kids are not, that it may create unnecessary judgment and social tensions and added mental health stressor. I had an administrator who couldn't be at the meeting express a perspective I hadn't considered. If we vote against the recommendations to mask, there will be a nearly impossible expectation placed on staff to somehow keep track of who's vaccinated and who's not, whose family needs their students to mask because they have younger siblings who aren't vaccinated or people at home with health concerns that put them at higher risk. How can we expect that of them on top of everything else? I mean, barring some kind of physical labeling, this is nearly an impossible ask. These kids deserve as much stability as we can give them. They deserve the chance to thrive. So when I consider the risk-benefit ratio here, I come out on the side of masking when indoors for the start of the 2021-22 school year and remain open to revisiting things if numbers change and vaccinations become available for all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? David?
Just briefly, I was glad to hear Stephanie give an extended series of the reasons. I had been thinking more narrowly, perhaps, that we really only had a dual responsibility to keep the schools open insofar as possible and to keep students and staff safe. And we have consistent recommendations from the public authorities, from our own medical officers, and our superintendent. And I don't see how we, I guess I don't see how we can responsibly do other than go with a masking program. regardless of how much inconvenient it may be. And I'm encouraged by the assurance that we're flexible and that we will be able to change and respond to any significant reduction in the risks.
Thank you. Any further comments? Tammy?
Last year at this time, this board was one of the few in the world that decided to try 5-day-a-week school for all students, when no one believed that it would be possible for us to remain in person through the year. We successfully completed the year with minimal interruptions or cases. Our students, parents, and staff worked hard in collaboration to keep themselves and others healthy by following good hygiene standards, social distancing, and doing self-assessments. In the last few months, some students and staff have been unmasked and enjoying their summer activities, teams, and jobs, and have continued to keep themselves safe. I believe we should not mandate mask use and continue to allow people to make the decision for themselves. Mandating medical choices for others is not something that I'm comfortable with.
Thank you. Anyone else like to chime in?
Last October, during our board meeting, the board unanimously approved a contract to use COVID-19 relief funds to purchase Honeywell ionization units that were installed in all of our schools and covered every classroom in the district. The cost of these units totaled $406,451. The units were tested to reduce SARS-CoV-2 by 99.4% in 30 minutes. My question is, why did we purchase these units if the children still need to wear masks?
Thank you, Wendy. Anyone else like to? Amy?
So I have a 5-year-old coming into the school, and I feel like my kid touches his face more with a mask on. So, you know, he's adjusting it, he's touching his eyes, he's touching his face, and regardless if you're wearing masks, you are taking them off at some point during the day. What are you doing with that when you're taking it off? Because you're drinking, you're eating, you've taken it off. Regardless if it's for 5 minutes, a half hour, you've still taken the mask off at some point during the day and perhaps exposed other people, because my kid took it off in the bathroom and wiped it on the floor and then puts it back on again. You know what's gonna happen. So, and then he's putting it on, touching his face again, and touching other surfaces that kids are touching. So I feel like good hygiene, hand washing, sanitizing surfaces is the better way to go.
You? Anyone else?
We're gonna have discussion again, right, because we have to have a motion to
Correct.
approve it.
Yeah. Yeah, Maggie, sorry.
I'd like to take a little different approach to this. So we're in the business of education. And so for me, we have an amazing opportunity to send a message to our students that the science that we're teaching in the classroom is real and is legitimate. We also have an opportunity to give a message to our students that say we believe that you have a future as an expert in science. Because we believe in the experts in science that we have now. We also have an opportunity to send a message to our teachers and our administrators and all of our employees that we care about them more than we care about whether or not these kids, and about their wellness and about our students' wellness, that we care, that they matter to us. And so I would just offer that we take the lead to center education as a tool for growing our next generation of experts in science, in the science field, who will one day remember this moment of putting community wellness above individual needs. And God forbid, a next pandemic. So I say we support the science that we are teaching in the classroom.
Thank you, Maggie. Anyone else? Hearing none, all right. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
oh, sorry, that's okay. I was just gonna say, so, I think that, as board members, we have an obligation to, voice what community members have said to us. So I have had many discussions over the last couple of weeks. People who have reached out to me, moms and dads, grandparents, children, lots of children. So I have a high schooler and lots of his friends. I've spoken with them. A friend of ours is a pediatrician. I've spoken with him. And all of those people who have had face-to-face conversations with me, all of them have stated that they would prefer to make medical decisions for their children on their own. What I'm hearing is that they do not feel that it is the school board's job to decide their child's health plan. So our job as school board members is to provide a great education for our for the children of the community. I agree with that 100%. I do think that we should, of course, we want to keep our kids safe and we want to look at that, but at what point does it become I'm making decisions for someone else's child? So we keep talking about safety and what that looks like, and I have scoured the CDC. So way back when COVID started, so I'm a nurse and I work in healthcare. Obviously I work in healthcare, and I was on calls almost every day with the CDC. And in the beginning, I distinctly remember many conversations. I remember specifically conversations with the CDC, from the CDC, about how cloth masks don't really do anything. There's, wearing a cloth mask they can't gauge how much it's protecting you from COVID. Since then, obviously a lot has changed, and what I'm seeing on the CDC now is that cloth masks help to slow the spread of COVID, along with hand washing and good hand hygiene. That basically initially they were saying that cloth masks essentially work by not allowing the droplets to come in contact with somebody else. And at that time, they were stating that it was much like coughing or sneezing into your elbow. I think that's still good information. Over time, that information is no longer on the CDC. However, I did look today, and under the healthcare portion of that, on the CDC, it states, and this is in quotes, cloth masks are not considered PPE since their capability to protect healthcare workers is unknown. Caution should be exercised when considering this as an option. So I get nervous when we are talking like cloth masks, because essentially cloth masks are what people are using. Some will use more of a medical grade, but again, even these, if not used properly, they are disposable. They are a one-time use, and if not used properly, they're not working. So my question is, why would we ask our children to wear them if we can't guarantee that they're working? And I agree with the whole face touching the face and all of those things. Masks are rarely worn properly. From a nurse perspective, I will look at a group of people and say, not correct, not correct, not correct, not correct, not correct. So really, what is it doing? How can I guarantee that that is making a difference when I could choose to teach my child all the other things that are important, like washing your hands, use hand sanitizer. If you're sick, keep your kid at home, that sort of thing. So I too would vote that masking is a choice for parents to make on behalf of their own families, what is best for their child and their families.
Do you mind if I second step in? Just briefly. The question of individual choice is of course a very interesting one, but whether individual choice can override the concern for the public safety and for the group is is another interesting one. I mean, the doctrine about, after all, free speech has always been defined as you are not permitted to cry fire in a crowded theater because the risk to others is of more importance than your personal opportunities to make your own choice. And when I think about the classic epidemics that we don't see anymore, because essentially preventative measures were mandated, smallpox, polio, I'm left with that sense that, yes, individual choice is a wonderful thing, but if the people making that choice are then going to participate, or their children are then going to participate in a group activity, the final concern of the people who are authorized, in a sense, to make policy for that activity has to be for the whole group, not sadly, for the individual's opportunity to choose. I'm not happy with that, but it seems to me the rational approach, and therefore, of course, I would favor the policy that's been recommended.
I also want to put on the table, there's a huge assumption being made that all parents are directly involved in making the best decision for their child. We have an incredible number of vulnerable students in our school district who may or may not have that level of parental support, and so it is our job as a school board to make sure that we are protecting their well-being as well. And by someone else making a personal choice for their child, they're also making a choice for mine. And so the individual choice is a false ideal, for sure.
We keep talking about the safety of the children. So in all of the data that is out there, including the American Pediatric Association, COVID-19 minimally affects children. It states on there, and I believe I wrote it down somewhere, that it's like 14% of children. And I'm not saying that any one child is more important than the other, but I think the perspective of those who do not want all children to have to mask is that if you're saying that we should be making decisions for all the children because of those reasons, I guess I'm struggling with why it is okay to do that. Why is it okay to make everyone's decision for them? It's different if we were talking about the geriatric population, because it affects them specifically with a high mortality rate.
But we are talking about the geriatric population. We are very much talking about the geriatric. When my 10-year-old goes to Crescent Park and then she goes and has dinner with my 95-year-old grandmother, we're talking about the geriatric population, for sure.
But then that becomes a family issue, and that becomes you making a decision to go visit your 85-year-old grandmother. I can tell you, in going into COVID, I was the most compromised. I had cancer, and I was in my cancer treatments as COVID came in. I knew that I was one of the most compromised, and my decision for that was that I did wear a mask. I became vaccinated as soon as I could. I did great hand hygiene, and I stayed home if that meant that I didn't get to be around a lot of people, because I knew that I was compromised. I was immunocompromised, so that was not a good choice for me. So I didn't feel that it was everyone else's problem, essentially, to take precautions when it was for me. I chose my own precautions.
I would also just like to point out quickly that as the older population has had the opportunity to vaccinate and has done so, that viruses, they find a host. So now younger people are getting it more. It's just, that's what happens in science and with viruses, and it's going to continue to do that. So because it hasn't at first affected young kids, now that the older people are getting vaccinated, it's finding a way, and the numbers are going up for children. I just fear that it will continue.
Any further discussion? So again, Tammy's motion is to essentially decline the superintendent's recommendation for math. So regardless of the outcome of this vote, we'll have to put another motion on the floor, and there will be further discussion. So that
So can
being,
you clarify that, so if we want to decline, like, can you say, this is what yes means and this is what no means?
yes. So the motion is to turn down the superintendent's recommendation of mask mandate for all schools and all students and staff. So a yes vote would be saying you do not support a mask mandate for all students and staff. A no vote would be the opposite. And again, there's gonna have to be another motion after this because there's no action involved in this motion. So, any further discussion before we vote? So, the motion to decline the superintendent's recommendation of masking for all students in school. Why don't we do a roll call for this one? Marcy?
Yes.
Stephanie Erickson?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Carol?
No.
Cheryl?
No.
Tammy?
Yes.
Maggie?
No.
Stephanie?
No.
Paige? Coral?
Yes.
Meredith?
Yes.
David?
No.
And I am a yes. So that motion passes. Now, we need a new motion on the floor to either mandate masks or not mandate masks for the reopening school. Anybody like to make another motion? I will make a motion that we reopen schools with no mask mandate for students and staff, and that it be optional based on personal decision.
I'll second that. Danny, can you repeat that for me?
The motion?
The motion, yes.
The motion was to reopen schools with no mask mandate and to let it be a personal choice for all students and staff. And Wendy, you seconded?
Yes.
Danny, I'm going to repeat it one more time, so I'll make sure we have it right in the minutes. To reopen school with no mask mandate and to allow for personal choice for all students and staff?
That's correct, yeah.
And it was Danny and Wendy, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Further discussion, Aaron?
Is there a way to amend that, so rather than a personal choice, it's strongly recommended?
I would second that.
So, did you state your entire motion then?
I can try. So, with the reopenings of schools, mask wearing would not be mandated indoors, but it would be strongly recommended.
Does that require a second?
Stephanie seconded it.
You have to accept it though as an amendment to your motion.
Could you restate it one more time?
Please,
Put it on the spot.
we're all right.
Masks would not be mandated with the reopening of school, however, they'd be strongly recommended.
And Stephanie, you're good with that?
Yes.
So second the amendment.
Danny, can I just repeat it one more time? I just want to make sure we have it right, and Deb Martin's listening in and hopefully doing a better job than me in being able to read what I'm writing. So, reopen school with no mask mandate, but, however, use of masks should be strongly recommended.
let David get caught up here on his notes.
Yeah, go ahead, I think I'm okay.
So I guess I have to accept that since I made the motion. I would accept that with the understanding that there would be no pressure from staff or administration on kids to mask, and that might be the recommendation, but they're not gonna pressure them to wear them if they choose not to. That would be my only caveat.
That's your motion, the way it's written right now, yeah, it would be okay.
Okay, so if you could just add that as a sub-note.
We've heard that, but I don't think you want to add it to the motion.
Okay.
Because then I have to write it all over again, and it'll be,
As long as it's on public record.
got it.
Discussion, further discussion. Carol?
So if this does pass, then what happens to the students that, especially the young ones like kindergarten, if they go to school, they see their friends not wearing their masks, but their parents strongly want them to have a mask on. Now who is monitoring this? Just the parents have taken the child's word, or is someone supervising who has to wear a mask and who doesn't?
If you're asking me, my answer would be that it would be like anything, you know. Most parents don't want their kids to smoke cigarettes or whatever, but some do. So yeah, it would be up to the parents and the individuals to decide for themselves. Is my understanding.
I'm kind of sending mixed messages to, you know, little children. I believe that their friends are not wearing masks and they're supposed to. I just think it's going to be difficult to control.
I will say, Carol, having two children who have participated in extracurricular activities all summer, where it's not required but strongly recommended, it's been about a 50-50 split of kids. There have been no issues. The kids whose parents have asked them to, they have been doing it. There have been no issues with any sort of stigma or anything that I have seen. And so I'm hopeful that that will go into the classroom as well.
That's what you can hope for, right?
Okay.
So I'm just kind of amazed that this group of people can hear from experts in all of these fields, our own school nurses, the CDC, the Maine Department of Education, our own superintendent, and say, no, we know better than all of those people know. On that level, to me, it's incredibly arrogant.
That's not what I'm hearing.
No, I think it's incredibly arrogant of us to think that we can make a decision that's different than the decisions and the recommendations of all of the scientists, the majority of science in this country, in this state, and in this town. I'm going to say that.
Maggie,
No,
Aaron's
no,
amendment to strongly recommend is the CDC recommendation. So it's
Right.
actually
I'm not
in
denouncing
line
anybody. I
with the
fully
CDC
respect and
guidelines.
agree with those
Yes.
recommendations. However, I don't feel we as school board members are in a position to make that choice.
That's exactly what we're here
Parents in the
for.
district.
That's exactly what
Not
we're
when it
here
comes
for.
to
That's
this
exactly what we're here for.
particular
And
issue.
I will say that for my 10-year-old daughter who goes to school, with me saying, you have to wear a mask, and her friends not wearing a mask, puts the responsibility of that on a teacher who's
It does not.
already overburdened
It
for
falls back
having
to
to
the parent
control
to
a
further
classroom
explain
and
that
whether
to
or
the
not
child.
my wishes are fulfilled in the classroom. That is the worst thing we could do to a teacher is continue to overburden them in the classroom.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
May I read the motion?
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong. The motion is to reopen school with no mask mandate. However, the wearing of masks is strongly recommended. Got it?
That's meaningless. A strong recommendation is meaningless. That's a meaningless part of this motion.
So,
What the board has decided.
and that's actually, like Stephanie said, that's what the CDC has.
It doesn't make it meaningful though. We're
Well,
here
I'm
to make a
saying-
meaningful experience for our children and our community. Our community is so small. Why would we not try to protect it with every measure possible?
This
Why would we
doesn't
not want to do
prevent
that?
We still can take all those measures, it just preserves choice.
As I said, and personal choice is a false ideal. It's not a real thing.
At this point, however, haven't we reached, I mean, we reached the point where the vote has obviously been against a mandated mask wearing. If, as I understand, unless any of us expect that persons who voted in that way are going to change their vote, the next best thing we're going to get, and I grant you that in my opinion it's not very good, is the motion that we have before us, because I don't really foresee us reversing the opinions of the majority of the board who voted it down.
Could make a motion to close debate. It requires 2/3 pass, but.
No, I'm not trying to stifle debate. I'm merely making that statement.
I do want to just reiterate that your personal choice affects my personal choice. Your personal choice affects my well-being and my health.
And I think that could be said on the flip side too, that if we mandate masks, that affects those students who don't want to wear a mask or aren't able to. And so I think that it does go both ways there. So, any further discussion? Okay. Let's vote. We'll do another roll call. David, would you restate the motion one last time?
You're just trying to catch me, Dave. Motion is to reopen school with no mask mandate, however, strongly recommend the wearing of masks, or something like that.
Okay, Marcy,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Erickson, Wendy Coffin,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Amy, sorry,
Yes.
Carol,
No.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Tammy,
Yes.
Maggie,
No.
and Stephanie H.
No.
Coral,
Yes.
Meredith,
Yes.
David,
No.
and I will vote yes.
So 10-4.
That's bad. All right, the motion passes.
And again, I just want to thank everybody for the conversation. We'll do the best we can at this point, and you know, if we need to reconsider or come back with additional information, we'll always do that. Either way, so thank you.
At this point, we would like to take a quick 5-10 minute break, and everybody get a drink and relax for a minute, and then we'll come back to the session.
Hey, just a quick clarification. Ronnie reminds me, it didn't come up in the conversation, but on buses, masking is required. That's a federal mandate. We have no part of that conversation. So all kids who ride on school buses will be required to mask. That's not part of the discussion for tonight. Thank you, Ronnie.
We used to have trade here.
Hey, Mike? Dave Carter wasn't on.
All right, we go, we'll call back to order here. You all set? Okay. All right, thank you. Give everyone a chance to regroup. We're on to number 4 on the agenda. We see what action the board wishes to take regarding approval of the superintendent's nomination of teachers to a first-year probationary contract for the 2021-2022 school year. And if somebody could make that motion and list those folks below,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
A motion that we accept the approval of the superintendent's nomination for Rosemary Weissner, district school nurse, Charity, oh boy, Mandaries, WES grade 3 teacher, Amber Roberts, WES physical education teacher part-time, Crystal Gould, CPS grade 5 teacher, Deborah Toothaker, K through 8 special education teacher, and Deborah Doyle, TMS grade 6 science teacher.
Thank you, second.
I'll second it.
Stephanie H. Thank you.
Um,
Wendy and Stephanie.
Wendy and Stephanie, thank you.
And discussion. Want David to start?
Yeah, thank you. We have been interviewing for candidates since before school got out. I'm pleased that we have been able to get some folks that you see on this list who have great experience, who know the district, and who've had opportunities to prove themselves elsewhere. Rosemary, you met Rosemary earlier. She's our new district nurse. Excited to get her. Rosemary had experience at Gould Academy. She's also been working at Camp Winona for a number of years. We feel fortunate that way. Charity Mangerides, I won't say that her husband and her husband's brother are both elementary students of mine. Helen, who would be her mother-in-law, worked for us for a long period of time, becomes very highly recommended, past experience. Amber Roberts, very fortunate to find a part-time PE teacher, and she's very excited to come on board, and she's going to try to do some subbing and so on in the afternoon to stay busy. Crystal Gould has been an ed tech for us for a number of years, another former student, and she's excited to take over as the CPS grade 5 teacher. Deb Toothaker worked with Community Concepts back when we first started our programs with the pre-K and so on, and now she's joining us as a special ed teacher, coming from a neighboring district where she served in that capacity. And Deb Doyle, who was one of our long-term permanent substitutes last year and has also worked in the district in various capacities, is joining us as the middle school grade 6 science teacher. And as you know, in the June meeting, you granted me the authority to go ahead and hire staff during the summer. Still, even though they've already all been issued a contract and they're all ready, set to come for Monday, it's still necessary for you to give formal approval to these tonight. So,
We need a motion to that effect?
I think we're going.
Yeah. Any discussion? I think we can vote with hands, so all in favor?
Thank you.
Unanimous. Thank you. And I think David needs to collect those at the end.
Yeah, I think there might be a couple more that are included in there, so I think Jean's might have that. Yeah.
Number 5, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding the superintendent's nomination of Jeannie Cordero as Director of Special Services for fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23. I'd like to make that motion.
I'll make the motion oh my gosh. To nominate Ginny Cordero as Director of Special Services for fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23.
Second. I'll second.
Thank you. So sometimes you go out and you look and you search and you try to find somebody who would be the perfect fit. And sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. And then sometimes you're very fortunate to have someone working in your own district who decides to step up and take on that responsibility. Jeannie is here tonight. Jeannie, would you wave to folks? Jeannie has served as a Director of Special Services in the past at a couple of different school districts, much bigger than this one, in New Hampshire. She came to us as a special education teacher and has done a magnificent job up here at the high school. And I think we were all kind of quietly hoping that she would decide to take the plunge one more time. And she's had experience as a Director of Special Services, which is different than as Director of Special Education. So as you might remember when we created this position, it's been a long time since we've had a full-time position in the district, and other things are coming under the umbrella besides special ed. And fortunately, she seems to take it all in stride. So she's going to be doing homeless, she's going to be doing gifted and talented, she's going to be overseeing pretty much any of the smaller components of different things that we've had to look at parceling out in the past. For this current year, I am recommending, and you'll see it in one of the next motions, that we continue to ask a couple of people to help out with that transition this year and still stay involved in a stipended way, very small, and assist her in that, but then a year from now probably will all come under that umbrella. It's a 2-year contract. It's $79,500 in year 1, which is within the budget that you had determined for this year, and $83,000 in year 2. One of the things that, again, you gave me the authority to go ahead and hire, and I stipulated at that point in time that when I was looking at an administrative position, I would involve the personnel policy facilities chair and the board chair, and I shared that with them as we were going through the process. Very excited. Jean's already done a great job with us, and we're pleased that she's decided to come on board and that we were able to get her. The salary for this year was prorated because she was on a teacher's salary schedule up until a certain point, but you know, she stepped in on prior to day one and has really done a good job. So we're excited to have her on board. I strongly urge that you make this official.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Thank you.
Number 6, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding appointing a delegate and alternate delegate to the MSMA Delegate Assembly on October 23rd, 2021. And if somebody could just make a motion for discussion, Dave, you can explain this, and then we can see if anybody's interested in doing this.
Make the motion for discussion.
Thank you. I'll second.
So the MSMA conference, and for those of you new to the board, it's Maine School Management Association conference. It's typically held at Augusta at the Civic Center for 2 days in October. Last year it was held via Zoom, and they had breakout sessions and so on, and they've made the decision to continue with that this year, so it's not in person this year either. And I know it's a little early considering we're still in August, and people are like, what? You know, especially if you're a new board member, you might not even have gotten this email from MSMA yet. But it will be offered on the 23rd and 24th. I think that's the Thursday, Friday. So if you're interested in going or participating, I guess, because you wouldn't be going anywhere, we will cover the cost of registration for you. And as part of those 2 days, one segment is a delegate assembly, where a representative from your board is asked to kind of weigh in and represent the board on statewide decisions that are being made. So I would say at this point, if you're not sure if you're going to go or not, we could probably table this until the September meeting, or you could contact Danny or myself if you're interested, and we could send an email out to let those of you know who really want it, that somebody else got in front of them and did it first. But usually we get a delegate and then we try to get an alternate just in case something should happen, because every district is, should participate in that conversation. And if you haven't seen anything, I know I got a copy of a proposed draft, but it wasn't close to being finalized. I don't know if that went out to all school board members yet or not. But if not, you're probably going to be getting an updated one very, very soon anyway. So my suggestion would be to table this until the next board meeting.
Marcia, are you okay to amend that to say
Yes.
table it? And I'm good with the second, so. So in the meantime, if you have any questions or you have any questions on it, email David or myself, and we'll probably put this on the agenda for the September meeting, and hopefully we get a couple people that are interested in doing it. So, all in favor of tabling till September? Yes. Carol, you good with it?
She's the delegate.
Yeah. That's right.
I'm left-handed.
Number 7, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding the superintendent's recommendation of individuals for the following stipend positions. If somebody's feeling like reading, Wendy. Anybody?
Yes, printed.
All right. So is it
You can just say as printed after.
as
the first.
printed or affirmative, or can I just say as printed? Or can I do them all?
Just say the top part to see what,
All right.
to approve the recommendation.
To approve the recommendation of the superintendents for the following individuals as printed.
Perfect. Second?
I'll second.
So I've spoken to everybody about this with the exception of Mr. Elliott, who's sitting very comfortably in that rocking chair. He did an exceptional job for us last year as the affirmative action coordinator, and hoping that he gives us a thumbs up that he's willing to do it again this year. Excellent.
No worries.
No pressure.
Yeah, that's right. Definitely putting you on the spot, John. So we have several stipend positions. In most bigger districts, they have full-time people who do these positions, or maybe a couple of these positions. We haven't done that. As a matter of fact, we have, we're in the process, like I said, of trying to maybe move some of these out under that umbrella. So My recommendation, and I'm sorry I don't have the exact amounts of those, I thought I had that in my folder, but apparently I don't. But they're minimal stipends. And John Elliott would be the affirmative action coordinator. Tanya Arsenault will assist Jeannie this year in terms of helping navigate the paperwork and do some of the things that she's done in the past. Tanya handled Title I completely last year as the coordinator for that on a very part-time basis, stipended position. So she's agreed to step in and do that again. Kristen Powell, who spells her name with only one N, but we put that in there to see if anybody would catch it. And I spoke with her, and she's interested in staying on and helping, again, with the transition with the homeless liaison. We do have homeless students in SAD 44. People do not necessarily think that a community like ours experiences that, but we sometimes have multiple homeless situations going on at the same time. So that's a very important position, and Kristen did it last year, and she did an exceptional job. The curriculum leaders, and if you're on the education committee, you'll hear from these folks as the year goes on. They're the people that kind of coordinate the different conversations around the review of the different curricula. And we're working on, again, once we have an opening right now for a curriculum director's position. We're still advertising for that. I hope to begin interviewing for that so that we can bring somebody on board. At this point, if a person is working in another district, I can't bring them on board until that superintendent is willing to release them. And in some places, they can be held, depending on their contract, for 30 days or more. So probably by the next meeting, and hopefully we'll have a candidate for that. But that person would oversee the different curriculum areas as they work their way through revisions. And so Elton Blouse, high school science teacher, she'll be responsible for high school science. David Lynch, a math teacher here, will be responsible for high school. Melissa Poston will be doing humanities. Tammy Davis will be doing Charlestown Middle School math. Pete Hedden, middle school teacher here, will be doing middle school science. Amy Lilly, ELA at English Language Arts at middle school. Kara Kimball, middle school social studies. And then we have TPEG facilitators. And these are folks that work with our staff members to be sure that they're developing appropriate student learning objectives for their evaluation purposes and so on. And we have Melissa Poston at the high school, and then Laurie Davis and Tammy split one position at the middle school. And all of these people, I believe, have come back and worked in these capacities before, and I recommend that they continue to do so. And if anybody's interested in what those stipends are, I can get that information out to you, and I apologize for not having it. I thought it was in my packet. It was apparently isn't.
But they all are budgeted.
They're all budgeted.
Any discussion on that, questions? All in favor?
Thank you. Who made the motion and seconded it?
I got Wendy with the motion and Stephanie H.
Thank
Second.
you.
Number 8, to see what action the board wishes to take regarding returning to in-person school board meetings beginning in September 2021 with the appropriate safeguards in place.
I'll make a motion that we return to in-person school board meetings beginning in September 21 with the appropriate safeguards in place.
I'll second.
Carol. Discussion.
I would just say that with the governor's order being lifted, there is a policy that you could or don't have to consider about allowing for continuation of remote participation. Some districts are looking at it, some districts aren't. At this point, you wouldn't see anything happen anyway until probably November, because you have to go through the policy committee review, the readings, and so on. So at this point, you're basically adhering to the fact that board members can't participate remotely at this point. They have to be here at the present time until such time as that changes through policy.
So if that's something folks are interested in, I would say contact the policy committee, which will be getting those out soon. And we have to go through those steps to follow our board policy as to how to add the policy to allow us to do remote meetings. So not a whole lot we can do tonight other than get the conversation started if there are any questions or concerns on that.
Appropriate safeguards, is that essentially what we're doing now?
Yeah, if you had voted the other way, then you would have had to have been masked. Now, anybody that's not vaccinated should be masked. You know, that's part of that whole recommendation, but, yeah.
So 3 feet.
3 feet, hand sanitizer,
Right. So you have that.
yeah.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Unanimous? All right, and thank you again to everybody for doing this in a professional manner. I know it's a heated topic sometimes, but I appreciate everybody, and we just need a motion to adjourn.
And I need to collect these packets too, please, so.
Stephanie, and a second, Wendy, and all in favor of adjourning? Thank you.
Stephanie, you made it.
Stephanie,
That's a bad.
It's the best. Oh my God, combination. There you go. And I'm 40, even. So it's like, I'm not ashamed of my age. Yeah.
Last chance, if anybody has, if you wants to turn it in before you leave, I'll take it.
The Monday morning class, it's just seeing another person, so it's very like,
I missed it.
you should come back.
I messed up that first one.
It worked out, but, yeah, I didn't mean to correct you.
It took me a second, and then I understood what you were saying, but as it turns out,
I
the way the votes went,
yeah.
it wouldn't have mattered because we were
I told
going to
Rebecca to
do
come
second
back.
anyways, but
Yeah.
I understand now. But I figured I'd just give her a choice. If I amend this, she